different nature and a different process and a different flow and stepping outside of the box. It's just, you know, Steve Harvey said it once in a inspirational video. He said, just jump. And so, you know, this, my first table made me want to jump.
Any other thoughts?
First table. What was your first table? Community engagement.
I'm mindful, based on our conversations about entering, engaging, and exiting communities, and how important it is to kind of just make sure that your motivation is kept intact for the type of work that you're endeavoring to do. Because, you know, we get stipulations, you know, put upon us, or we create metrics, right, when we apply for funding and things of that nature. And so a lot of times, you know, our focus can shift to that bottom line, right? And I have to maybe check this goal off and check that, but it really is about remembering the humanity. And it's something I know and I try to keep in mind, but sometimes with, you know, with fundraising and development and all that kind of stuff, your priorities shift, you know, and so it's just like, you know, just sitting here and listening to everybody talk, it was a good reminder about, you know, the interaction with the community and keeping that mission part of it as the focus.
I was in graduate school 12 years ago, and I took a class called Social Entrepreneurship. And in that class, you know, the person that was celebrated locally is Bill Strickland for his work at the Manchester Craftsman's Guild. And I think what struck me the first table I was at, we were talking about social entrepreneurship, is just how kind of like the term is evolving and how our understanding of what that means in our communities is continuing to evolve. So I thought that was really cool that, you know, maybe the definition 12 years ago was one thing, but now it kind of means, I think it's like broader. What I experienced at the table is the definition of broader is broader. We talked about it being like the natural extension of activism, so like applying activism kind of in a more economic way to bring value to communities. So I think it'll continue to evolve. I think the fact that there's this program at Point Park, I find interesting, even the title of the program, like community engagement. So I think there's like stuff evolving in that space. I just found the whole evolution of this to be interesting.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Anybody have anything else that they would like to say? So I'm going to hand it off to John. He's going to walk over to the next update, which is discovery.
Thank you, Michael. I believe that was a really good segue, the keyword evolution. That really leans into what we're going to discuss for the second D in the appreciative inquiry approach, and that is discovery. And one of the key aspects of discovery is storytelling. And I believe that through storytelling, and what I sensed and picked up through just this evening with the group, storytelling became a very key critical component of the deliveries that were brought. And what was mentioned just earlier in our harvest, another key word that I picked up on was diversity, and the diversity of thought. And I believe that through storytelling and sharing experience, that ultimately we can discover new ways, new opportunities. So I would like, if possible, if anyone can share a story that they may have heard this evening from a member of the group that maybe stuck with them, brought a new insight on something that they maybe were unaware of, or just anything in particular that maybe stood out, or if they would like to share a story of their own that they really felt brought a lot of meaning and purpose to the conversation this evening. I would certainly encourage you to share. Anyone interested? Those stories that particularly stood out? I'll pass it to my cohort member. Thank you, Tia.
It's something that will never leave me, and it's the term beneficence. Did I say that right? Beneficent, so beneficent. So giving back, serving, and I'm going to extend it to just showing up, being kind. It's not a one-time volunteer act or an event or a program or engagement, but it's a lifestyle. So So if you wrapped up everything that we're trying to do in this program and outside of this program, it is to create a different way of being in the community. It is to create a lifestyle of beneficence.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that's very critical in all the efforts that we partake in our professional lives. And that is, again, becoming a part of. It's not a one and done. And I think that is something that Tia just laid out magnificently for us. So, does anyone else care to share a story? Michael? Thank you.
In the community engagement space, there was a gentleman that shared how communities that, working with community engagement can sometimes create dependency as opposed to cultivated independence. As he talked about, it matters to work yourself out of a necessity, right? And that doesn't happen. And I really valued some of the things. And so he specifically talked about being an enabler instead of a creator, right? Like, I'm mixing some of my parroting and what he said, but basically, if anyone was there to help me, but basically as a community engagement agent, you should be enabling the potential they already have and then get out of the way, as opposed to create a dependency, and then they're stuck in the box of your imagination of what they can do.
Thank you. Okay, we have another story. Celeste?
Not really a story, but a quote that I heard. That's okay. Switch. Father who just spoke, he said something that stuck with me. He said, leaving a trail of bodies instead of a trail of heroes. And it was, connected to the story of just.
Can you say that again? Say that again, please. I feel like that was good.
And he said, leaving a trail of bodies instead of a trail of heroes. And it was connected to the story that he just told. And I just thought, it's just such a good visual. And it's something, that'll stick with me. Leaving a trail of bodies instead of heroes.
It's good. It specifically had to.
Hold on one second, Michael, because we'd love to all hear. Thank you.
Yeah, it's author. It was my quote, people. But seriously, it was mine. But it just had to do with working with a narcissistic leader. And I noticed some things, but you work with some people and you notice stuff's off about them as a leader, but you're like, never mind, whatever. But as such an individualized society, we imagine that people's stories begin when we meet them. And I had to learn how to find out his story before I met him, and I found a trail of bodies instead of a trail of heroes. And this is a leader that's well known, and there was more deaths behind him than new life.
That's right. But yeah.
So when I was in the community engagement section, Eddie shared a story about he's reading a lot of books about being happy. And so for me, I'm at a phase of my life that I know that there probably are less years on the other side than on the previous side. And so I'm in that space as well. And so when we start looking at, so I took it to another level because that's something I'm focusing on as well. What is really living and what is really quality of life. And so looking at the hours that I spend at work, which are a lot, but looking at how I can carve that out to, and that's what he got me thinking about, how many hours do you actually sleep? 4.5, 5. And how many hours are you engaged in doing what you enjoy? How many hours are you engaged in working? And I know I'm a little out of balance. And so, in just looking and projecting into the tomorrows, I know that, and I'm not unhappy, so I'm going to qualify that, but I know that there can be greater happiness in just getting my life hours aligned. So, thank you, Eddie.
Thank you so much for sharing. You have another comment?
I'd like to share a story from Engaged Scholarship because there was some awesome conversation that was happening at the Engaged Scholarship table, and somebody had said, I think it was Dr. Michael Quigley, who had to leave and take his young son home. He was talking about the importance of shifting away from the anthropological purposes of research. And that we, as engaged scholars, should be thinking about being healers as well, and how we use the data to transform communities, which got me thinking about my peer sister scholar, Kendra, always talking about healing and hope, right? And that we should be thinking about leveraging community-based participatory research practices and other asset-based approaches to look at the context of these communities from a cultural lens to make sure that the data that we gather is not misinterpreted or misapplied to certain communities. And so all of you at one point sat at the Engaged Scholarship table and you kind of co-fed that concept. And so I just wanted to make sure for the greater good that that important story about healing and hope and balance also is included.
Thank you so much, Aaliyah.
So my role has been to observe all of the groups.